Hi, my name is Raymond Overman. I'm with the Charlotte Woodturners Club, and I've been turning for about 7 years. I do doing a series of teapots right now, and that's what I'm going to be demonstrating tonight. This is one of the latest that I've done. This is called Aren't You Glad I Said Tea, and the body is a cherry, just a regular cherry wood, and it's all one piece, turned and carved, and then the lid is turned and carved as well. It's made out of Spanish cedar. The concept behind what I'm turning is multi-axis. I'm doing an axis, an x-axis, I would guess, and then a y-axis turning, carving the spout and the handle, and then finishing it with a texture. This particular texture is a needle scaler. You can pick them up at Harbor Freight, and they make a little dimple orange peel type texture on it. One of my older pieces. This is one of my older pieces. This is called elephant tea, because of the elephant horn and the kind of the larger body on it and the short snout. This is out of cedar. Has some black wood in the top and in the bottom, and as well as some burl in the finial. This is one of my older pieces, and something that I was doing before I actually started doing the single body pieces. It has a lot of carving in it as well, but it is hollow, has the hollow form down to the bottom. So, furniture maker, and so he's cutting corners there to cut down on the time that he has to spend at the lathe, which is what I'm having to do here too. So what I've done, I've taken blocks, I've taken pieces off and then taped it back together, taken more pieces off in different angles until I get the basic shape of a teapot out of my block of wood. And that's going to cut down on my turning time. It's also going to cut down on the amount of weight that I'm going to have to deal with, and it's also going to I'm not going to have to carve as much. Plus, it gives me a visual as to where I want to stop and start to get this turned into a teapot. So first off, I start with, and we'll call this an x-axis, and then I'll turn it this way, and we'll go with the y-axis to actually turn and carve out the middle, or to hollow it out. So we'll turn it this way, carve this side, or turn this side, turn it around this way, turn this side, turn it this way, or I'm sorry, turn it this way, turn a tenon, and then we're going to turn it this way and turn the top and hollow it. From there, we'll carve, we'll do everything else that needs to be done to a teapot before it can look like that. So let's get started with the turning. Anybody have any questions on how I got to this point, or any questions about the process?
Just a general question, in gold, is it going to be actually hold water? How are you going to make it water?
It's not.
It's decorative.
It's decorative. I can promise you that people buy $2,000 or $3,000 teapots at Del Monte. They don't care if it holds water or not. They're not looking for a piece to hold water, and I'm not making a piece that will hold water. What I'm making is is an artistic turning.
You make those cuts on a bandsaw, is that the way you?
I make it on a bandsaw.
You glue pieces back on as you go.
I just use, the best thing to have in the shop is, next to CA glue and, is a thing of blue painter's tape, to me. Of course, the CA is indispensable. Now what I did here, I just put some waste blocks on here so that I can mount it between centers also. I usually don't do this because if I'm in my shop I have enough time to carve those away that I can just put them right up to the It's just a 3/8 inch bowl gouge. It's a P&N. You want to come up and take a look at it later. Okay, now you probably can't see this from where you're at, but I've got a circle here that I can see that lets me know where to cut. And I'm going to start cutting outside of that circle and kind of getting an idea of my curve. Getting an idea of where things are, and I'm looking out here to see and I stop the lathe a lot and look at it, and what I want to think about is the curve that's coming from the body of my teapot into the spout, as well as the body of the teapot into the handle. So I'm about there on this side. As you can see, I'm coming in and got a nice curve there. Got a little bit more to take out right here at the corner where I cut a little bit too deep. I'm just riding the bevel of the tool right in this area. You see that? It's right in here. That's where I'm making that cut at. Now, I'm not real concerned about having a real clean edge, smooth edge, because this is going to take a lot of carving. It's going to be, most of the clean edge and everything is going to be actually sanded. So as far as some tool marks here, I'm not real concerned about it. I'll catch that later on with my sandpaper and everything else. So get the tool rest a little bit closer there. Each one of these turns out a little bit differently. Okay, so there. That's one side. So now we'll back the tool rest off, or the tool, whatever this thing is down here. Turn it around. I do like this chuck.
Gives you a little more room.
And now the goal is, of course, to basically make this shape over here. Always spin the piece 2 or 3 times before I turn it back on. You never know what you're going to catch. There's that John Benton cut where he pushes in against the piece of wood and the end grain, and it's going up here just a little. Still looking at that outside edge. be, that is pretty close there for the, that look pretty good. Okay, so now I've got the body of my teapot pretty much turned. I'm still going to have, from here, we'll come back. Okay. Here we go. Did not, you have a, yeah, just a wood chisel. Yep. A hammer. You always forget something. So from this point, we'll be able to fare these in with the carving tools, basically. You can go in and actually go ahead and turn these. And if I was in my shop, as I say, I would probably not even put the glue blocks on there. I would just leave a little bit extra wood in the blank. But for the time that we had tonight, I put them in there. So now we've still got the center point on this side and the center point on this side that I'm going to use as kind of a guide. I'm not necessarily going to say that that's exactly where we want to put it, but we'll put it between centers in the other axis.
Glue do you put on the glue block?
Not a lot. I mean, it's just a little bit of CA glue. I'm not really even concerned. I don't want it to hold that well. The pressure is going to keep it between centers. The okay. So the next thing I've got to do is turn a tenon. As well as the bottom of the teapot. Because I don't want it to go all the way up to the, so I draw it back in, and then my handle will probably have it come in something like this. So you draw those back in, and we'll put a So now we'll go back to my center point and true up the bottom and put a tenon on it. The nice thing about these are that you can do them on a mini lathe too. It's not necessarily something that you have to have a huge lathe for, or as long as you size it appropriately, you can do it on whatever lathe you want. Now every cut that you're making out here is cutting into some piece of the teapot. So you've got to be aware and not be too aggressive about it. This cherry turns so well. Turn a nice tenon. And now that side's done. Next step is we'll turn it around and put it back in the chuck.
What would you say is the minimum tenon height?
It depends on the size of your jaws. You don't want the as long as the tenon doesn't bottom out in the jaws, you're okay. But I don't make them. I don't know how big is that. That's kind of big for what I usually do. A quarter of an inch will hold just as well as the bigger ones, and the longer, depending on how long your tenon is, the more you get out there off of the edge, off the end of that tenon, you've got grain there that can break, and it's not as strong as what you can do, especially with that long boring bar there.
You're going to take that tenon off later on?
Yes, we will take the tenon off. And sometimes you don't. I mean, sometimes you make it a foot. You can make it into a foot. You can. I don't turn a lot of stuff with tenons on it. I like round bottom.
I get that, but if you're going to take tenon off, it don't matter what size you take.
That's right. That's right. Except that you definitely don't want it to bottom out in your chuck,
Right.
because this chuck is designed so that it holds tightly out here on this edge. But if you bottom it out in the chuck, it won't hold it won't make that hold. My father and I have had some experience earlier in our turning career of things coming off the lathe, and I'm sure everybody else has too. It's not fun at all. So, I mean, some people might think it's fun, but depends on what you. Okay. So now, at this point, I want to stay, and I should have done this before. put it on here. At this point, I want to make my cuts in between these two lines, because I don't want to get into the top edge of this, of my handle too much. I want it to be, this I can take out with my bandsaw, or I've got an air tool in here that I'll probably use to take this out here tonight. But this part of it and this I can cut off later on. This I can't put back after you see. So you're always looking at, here's my limit. Here's what I can turn inside these lines. I can't turn outside these lines, or I'm going to end up in my handle or in my spout, and then you don't have a teapot anymore. You have a hollow form. Or you have a design opportunity. And all of us have had those too. I'll screw this back in, Dave, so I don't lose it like I did mine.
It'll turn up.
Okay. Those lines I drew earlier, they make a nice little mark there. And so now there's the top of my teapot. So I've got the bottom, I've got the sides, and I've got the top. And now I've just got to hollow it out. Now this is a $5 tool that every woodturner should have. I went to WT Tool, which is up in Charlotte on, it's off an Industrial Drive, I believe. Behringer. Clanton and then Behringer, I think, is the way you get there. Well, they sell a set of drill bits for $5, and they're all this long. And so you take the 3/8 inch drill bit out of that set and put a handle on it, and it makes a great tool to find the depth of a hollow form with, or the depth of a bow. If you're cutting into a bow, to start out with this, it does away with that little nub at the end, at the bottom of your bow, until you get all the way to the bottom of your bow. Whenever you get to the end of the hole, you stop turning. Yeah, unless you want to fun, that's right. There again, you got to know where to stop. And blue painter's tape. Makes a good mark. This is going to be my hole that I'm going to hollow through. Yes, I'm going to make it bigger. It's close enough. Here's the other thing you can pick up at WT Tool. This is a 1/4 by 1/4 by 8-inch piece of M2 steel. This tool is already hardened for you. All you have to do is take it to your grinder, make a little rounded edge tip on it, and then bring it right back to and put it in a handle, and you've got an excellent small hollowing tool. I don't know how many of you do ornaments at Christmas, hollow ball ornaments at Christmas. This does great. If you can figure out a way to bend this end, it does great doing that as well. What I did for that tool is this piece. It's a little piece of 3/8 inch, I don't know if this is cold roll or a piece of drill rod, but I just put a little piece of this in the end, and this is what David Ellsworth used whenever he started doing hollow forms, and I think he probably still does. All these people who have the captured hollowing systems, your job is easy comparatively, but for small pieces, these things work great. And they're very inexpensive to make, inexpensive and very easy to make. Okay, so now we'll just start hollowing. We'll start making my hole a little bit bigger. How many of you have seen a hollow form demonstration? Anybody? This is a little bit different. I'm not concerned about getting 1/16 of an inch walls with this hollow form. If you are, you have to do a little bit more measuring because you've got all these axes that you just turned on and you don't know exactly where the outside of your bowl of your piece is. So what I do is I turn it a little bit thicker and don't worry about it, because if you pick that up, it's still light, it's still small, and it's still it's plenty thin for what it is. It's just at a, I don't know, it's about a, what angle is that? About a 45, almost a 45. And I really, once I sharpen it the first time, I don't really sharpen it again with the grinder. What I do is I take a, I can find it, that's why I wore my cargo pants tonight, so I have stuff in my pockets too. Oh, there it is. What I do to sharpen this is I'll just hone the top of it a little bit and then draw back up on it to kind of draw a burr on top of that edge.
What are you sharpening?
This is just a little diamond hone that you can get from Klingspor Woodcraft to Craft USA. Probably you might be able to get something like this from one of the big box stores. I don't know. I think I got this one from Klingspor. But I just pull it back up, and it gives a nice little sharp edge there. It does great for soft woods like this, and once you get more than about 2 inches off of your tool rest, it starts to chatter, That's the only problem. You can't do all the way to the bottom or big pieces with this. But pass that around and I'll at least maybe I'm going to turn this on and get some of those chips out. While y'all are passing that one around, I'm going to use this one. I'll go back to that one, so I may ask for it back. Now all I'm doing now is kind of getting right there at the shoulder. Anybody go to the symposium? Anybody? They have some. I heard they had some really cool hollowing tools there, with that new monster tool and the Cobra system and the 2 or 3 others that are out there. I'm just going in right here at the top and working my way down. I've got a ridge in there that's probably about 1 inch below the top, where I know I'm leaving that ridge there so that I know where to start back with that other tool once I get back in there. And that kind of gives me an idea as to where I'm at and what I'm going to be doing next. Doesn't take long to fill up the chips.
So at this point, you're pretty much doing this all only by feel, not by sight.
I'm listening too. I mean, there's a lot of turning, of course, is listening. I'm listening to how that wood sounds and is vibrating, and kind of, I've been doing it long enough that I kind of know where I'm at that way. Every once in a while my ears deceive me, but there again, a design opportunity. Okay. Right here at the top, I'm about where I want to be. Got a little bit more in that shoulder. Okay. Sharpen this just a little bit. See if I can get rid of that chatter. And I'm just working in this top quarter of the hollow form at this point, trying to get a good, consistent thickness. I think I'm about where I want to be. I could probably go a little bit more, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I will not. So now we'll go back to this tool and try to get a little bit more out of the bottom. It may chatter on me and I may have to move to the bigger tool. This is a cherry, and it's I don't know how long when did we cut it?
Just before Thanksgiving.
Just before Thanksgiving, and it's been, I've had a piece of it in my backyard since then. So it's wet though. I mean, you can feel it from here. It's real wet still. Let's do this so that we can get rid of that chatter. I changed tools. I listen to one. If it doesn't sound like I want it to, I switch to another pretty quick. This is another homemade tool, 5/8 inch cold rolled steel, $10. You get 2 tools out of it at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever. And then that bit came from WT Tool there again. You just 5/8 will actually go through the tailstock on a 1642 or an old, I don't know if it will on this one or not, but it will actually go through the tailstock on for a number 2 Morse taper. And then you tighten down on it with your wood chuck, and if you have a Jacob's chuck, you can drill right into the end of it, and it's just as true as it can be. So this, however, is not a $10 tool. This is a John Jordan special, and it costs about $65. It's probably made out of the same steel and basically the same bit. with doing hollow forms, you have to stop and clear chips because they get in the way of your cut.
Ray, are you working a slight negative rake on your scraper?
Slight. Yeah, I'm a little bit below center. Again, chips get in your way. And I cut with push and pull there. Whenever I cut in, I push in and cut, and then whenever I'm pulling out, I cut, and there again, I've got a little rig in there that I can feel and kind of know where I'm at on the cut. I'm probably about halfway down, a little bit lower than halfway. Take a few cuts and clear them out. That's about where I want to be in the side. So now I've got to get to the bottom of that thing. I've still got a couple of ridges in there, just kind of, I guess, better term is a witness mark to kind of tell me where they are and where I am in the bowl. And a lot of difference in the sound of that air hose now that it's empty. We'll clean up actually I'm going to get the chips out of it one more time. I'm going to clean up the edges. And I think I'm going to be about done with polishing. First one of you wants to stick their finger in there, you're welcome to. talking about with this tool, the actual cutting, I'm actually holding it at about this angle right here. So I'm not up here, because that's going to get me a catch real quick. I'm not at I'm not here. I'm down here a little bit, because physics is going to say that as it's dragging by there, I can adjust for that. I can't, if I get a catch here, I can't necessarily adjust with my wrist here. I surely can't adjust here, because it's going to have, this has a lot of strength, a lot of torque there. Well, I like the sides on it pretty well. The bottom's a little bit thick, but I think I'm going to leave it the way it is for the purpose of the demonstration.
And what speed are you turning at?
This is at 850. I turn from anywhere from, I turn for whatever's comfortable, to be honest. At home, I would probably go ahead and turn this up to about 1100, 1200 RPMs, but I don't, well, this one does have 1100. There again, I don't have people sitting right in front of me that I could throw something off if I got a bad catch.
We appreciate that.
No problem. I'm going to pass that around, and y'all can take a look at it. The next step that, go ahead and set up the carbon station while we're at it, or while y'all are passing that around. Tool that it works real well. You can use a Dremel, or for that matter, if you want to, you can use a rasp and a file, and you don't have to spend the money for this particular tool to get the results that I do tonight. Where's my teapot? Okay. Go ahead and pass it around, that's fine.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions, anything?
When you was cutting those things with a bandsaw, then you take it back on. Why did you take it back on?
Well, I wanted to tape it back on tonight to show you kind of where we were at. The other thing was, whenever you're working with a bandsaw, there was pieces that I had to tape back on so that I could cut other pieces off. Because what I did, that's some piece of wood back here, kind of illustrate. Yeah. What I did was, to make it easier, I cut quarters out of it, or cut the corners out of it, so that I had just the piece that I'm going to use for my spout, my handle, and then I taped those back on so that I could have support while I cut this part out and cut the handle. Then I taped it back on so I could show y'all how it came apart and what you started with and what you finished with.
Mostly just to give support for the next cuts.
Just give support for the next cut. So you're not cutting above the table on your bandsaw. That doesn't tend to not work very well most of the time. So okay for your, we'll be carving here. Okay, the next. Been having a little bit of problem with this tool. It's a Harbor Freight tool. This is called an air body saw. Trent Bosch uses this. If you've ever been to the AAW show or the North Carolina Woodturning Symposium, he uses one of these, and that's where I got this from. It's $18. It's basically an air-driven reciprocating saw. So for that, I can cut these pieces out where I've got, and go ahead and carve that down a little bit and get rid of that wood fairly quickly. I like using my chuck, and at the house I've got if you've got one of these lathes, if you drill a hole right here all the way through and put an Allen wrench through, you've got a hands-free headstock lock. So I can work here all I want to and not have to have my hand out here to support anything. As I say, I've been having a little bit of problems with this. I'm hoping it's yes. Thanks, Bob. Everybody needs a lovely assistant. beat you to it. Forgot that you told me to turn that off. Got everything hollowed, got everything, got the top roughed out. What I want to do next is drill my hole for my spout. So this is out of that same set of $5 tools. You might help me again. And I want to just line up a straight shot. Get my hole started. Slowly drill it in. Clear the chip so it doesn't wander. Don't ask me how I know about that. Either through the bottom or the back side. Okay. So now I've got a hole through here that I can carve back to. And you can do all kinds of different things with these teapots as far as your carving is concerned. If you want to just round them out, don't put any, just have round edges and nice clean curves, you can do that. You can put spirals, you can flute them, you can do anything that you can do with a bow, you can do with one of these. Great examples of teapots as far as wood turners are concerned. Go out on the internet, look at Art Leastman. Tanya Rada is another one that does, I mean, just astounding work. She does a lot of stuff with bent laminations. She takes real thin strips of maple and other different woods and glues them together and makes these curlicues and looks like the teapots out of Disney movies and stuff.
What's the last name on Tanya?
Rada, I think it's R-A-D-A, if I'm not mistaken. T-A-N-I-A, Rada. Art Leastman, Tanya Rada. Who else is doing teapots? There's a few other. There's a couple of others that are doing wood turn teapots or wood teapots. A lot of them that are carving, just specifically carving. So next off, I've got a fairly aggressive carbide tip burr. This is a red burr. If you're familiar with the Fordham tools, the red ones are more aggressive than the blue, I think. We'll just come in here and start carving. We'll carve away this. Anywhere I see a line, I'm going to just try to ferret in. usually work just like this. I usually have it in my chuck, and I'm sitting here doing like this, and I'm just moving this just very little, so that I can shape my teapot. A lot of times whenever I'm doing the carving portion of it, I'll do this in 2 sessions. I'll usually do the turning portion and then put it in a bag and just put some shavings around it so that it doesn't dry out too fast, put it in a plastic bag, and then I'll come back in a couple of days to do the carving. And I don't know, the turning part, it's one mindset to me, and then the carving part is another mindset. And so if you can do it all, sometimes I do it, some of it all at the same time. Most of the time I'll do it in a couple of different sessions. For one, the carving's kind of, I've got to think about what shape I've actually ended up here with. I know an idea as to what I'm going to get whenever I start one of these, but I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm going to get because there may be a design opportunity in there. The other part, the handle. I come through, just drill a hole. Drill a few holes actually. A lot of times I'll use a bigger bit than this too. And then I can use my reciprocating saw or a coping saw or anything else to remove most of the waste material in there, and then carve back to what I want my handle to look like. since this is a wood turning club, I doubt y'all want to watch me sit here and carve this whole thing. Plus the idea is that you're going to refine it, you're going to get it, one of the things that I'll do on this piece, I think, is probably I want to put a spiral spout on it. And the way to do that is take a little thin piece of tape and longer thin piece of tape. And just get it at the angle that you want and then wrap it around. And now got a nice line there that I can carve to. I do this with finials also. You can, you've just got a straight finial, you wrap your piece around there, and then as long as you're not worried about the precision of it, if you just want a spiral, you can just wrap it right around and carve your finials like that. And then what you do is you leave the line. You carve around the line here. So you do that. Well, that hole goes a little bit to the left. That's okay. But there again, your creativity on these is what counts. You know, you can carve, you can texture them. That's what I'll do next. How many ever use one of these? James Bond and this is called a needle scaler. There again, Harbor Freight. Use it for welding. Whenever you buy it, it comes with about, I don't know, 20 of these little tips in it. And what you do is you fight a little D-ring in the back here for about 30 minutes and take that out and take all these little tips out, and you take about 8 or 10 of them and round them over on your, they come with a flat, just a straight cut off flat edge, and they're used to get scales off after you've been welding. Well, you take the tips and take them to your grinder and round them out, and it makes a nice dimpling to it. And it's loud. Should have warned you. But what it gives you is this orange peel look to it. And that's what I did on this piece. I call this piece, aren't you glad I said T? I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and the worst thing I've ever taught her is that joke that, well, knock knock, who's there, banana? Knock knock, who's there, banana? Knock knock, who's there, banana? Knock knock, who's there, orange? Orange who? Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? Well, she says it constantly now.
Teach her a new one.
Yeah, so, but I kind of did that after I kind of thought about that idea. As I say, I'm not going to go ahead and do the carving on that. The finial part is up to you as well. It's very simple. You can just make a little button top on it if you want to put a button on it. You can do like I did here and make a button and then carve the leaves and add those. You can make finials. You can do, in this piece I carved the finial on it and used a piece of burl, and it sits right on top. This is one of my older pieces, and it's progressed into this single piece of wood becoming a teapot rather than 3 or 4 pieces of wood becoming a teapot. And that's kind of where I'm moving into now. So anybody have any questions, any ideas?
What are you finishing with?
This one is finished with a wax, just a paste wax. And actually I think, I dipped this one in, I've got a 5-gallon bucket that I put a gallon of boiled linseed oil, a gallon of mineral spirits, and a quart of clear varnish in. The mineral spirits is a drying agent. The oil is, of course, it makes the wood real pretty, and then the varnish is to harden it. I got that from a guy named Russ Fairfield. He posted it on a website a while back, and I've been using it ever since. The neat thing about it is you've got a 5-gallon bucket of the stuff, and so whenever I get ready to finish something, I put on a pair of gloves, I go over and I dip it in that bucket, and bring it out and wipe it and put it on a piece of wire and let it dry for a little while. I'll rub it off, and then I'll go back and wax it after that and buff it, and that gives that satin finish.
How much varnish? Quart?
It's a quart of varnish, quart of clear varnish. This one is finished with a Def spray lacquer.
How long does it take you to finish one of those typically?
With the carving and everything, I've probably got about 8 hours in this one total. But there was some learning things there too. So.
When you sand it, you put a sanding drum in your board?
I do. I have a small one right here in the back. It's just a little sanding drum. I do a rough sand with this, just to kind of clean up any extra lines that I see, and then I go back and I'll use I've got a angle drill, and I'll sand through as much as I can get to, from anywhere from 80 on up to 400. Now for stuff like this, there's no need to sand it past 180 because you're getting ready to dimple it anyway. You're getting ready to compress that wood and anyway, so why I sand it 120, 180, and then I just dimple it. For the other stuff, for anything that's finished, I just use a one-time. Anything else? Okay. Well, I'm going to put this back on this is a piece of that same cherry that I made this out of. You saw how easy it turned. It's on the raffle tonight. these pieces are some older pieces too, that I did prior to this piece. This piece is, and at that point, I was turning this axis and turning this axis and turning this axis. I don't know that's kind of overkill because I want that spout to go up, but this is another piece, another way that I did it for a while. This is using that same technique as we did tonight, but it's going to take a lot more carving. And it's, I think it's pecan or hickory. A friend of mine gave it. It's a piece of wood to me.
You use a lot of wood or using some dry
Wet wood.
Only wet?
Yeah. I don't like to turn dry wood. I don't like to turn it. If I can get wet wood, I use wet wood because the hollow forms, they're not going to, as long as you get them fairly thin, it doesn't matter if they're out or round. So as long as you get them fairly thin, they don't crack. It doesn't matter if they're out or round. So it's easier to turn wet wood. Why not turn wet wood? Great job.